cold, foggy night in 1982, Arthur Miller, a man in his 50s with salt and pepper hair, wire wrists, and a brown trench coat, sat alone at the Edgehill station. The air was thick with the scent of damp coal and old metal as he clutched his leather briefcase. The station lights flickered rhythmically, casting long, eerie shadows across the platform that seemed to dance in the mist. Arthur checked his pocket watch, realizing the final train was running late, an unusual occurrence for this route. He felt a strange sense of isolation, as if the rest of the world had simply vanished into the fog.
The train finally pulled in, a hulking iron beast puffing steam into the midnight air. Arthur Miller, the man in his 50s, with salt and pepper hair, wire-rimmed glasses, and a brown trench coat, stepped into the dimly lit carriage and saw a young woman in a vibrant red velvet coat sitting near the back. She appeared distressed, her hands trembling as she clutched a small silver locket. Arthur took a seat across from her, offering a polite nod, but she didn't seem to notice his presence at all. Her eyes were fixed on the dark window, reflecting a face that looked hauntingly familiar, yet displaced from time.
As the train rattled through the countryside, Arthur Miller, the man in his 50s with salt and pepper hair, wire-rimmed glasses, and a brown trench coat, tried to strike up a conversation to ease the tension. The woman finally spoke, her voice a mere whisper, claiming she was heading home to a village called Oakhaven to see her parents. Arthur froze, remembering that Oakhaven had been destroyed by a flash flood over 20 years ago, leaving nothing but ruins. When he tried to ask her more, she simply pointed toward the window and said that her stop was coming up soon. A heavy, unnatural chill filled the cabin, making Arthur's breath visible in the dim light. Suddenly, the train entered the Blackwood Tunnel, plunging everything into absolute darkness for several long seconds. Arthur Miller, the man in his 50s with salt and pepper hair, wire-rimmed glasses, and a brown trench coat, heard a soft, melodic sigh right next to his ear. When the train emerged back into the moonlight, the seat across from him was completely empty. The woman in the red coat had vanished into thin air, leaving no trace behind, except for her silver locket lying on the floor. Arthur scrambled to his feet, heart pounding against his ribs, looking frantically around the empty carriage for any sign of her exit. Desperate for answers, Arthur Miller, the man in his 50s with salt and pepper hair, wire-rimmed glasses, and a brown trench coat, ran to the conductor's booth at the front of the train. The conductor, an elderly man with a weary face, listened to Arthur's frantic story with a look of somber realization. He told Arthur that no woman had boarded the train at Edgehill, and that Arthur was the only passenger in that carriage for the entire journey. The conductor's hand shook as he pointed to an old newspaper clipping pinned to the wall, dated exactly 20 years ago to the day. Arthur stared at the photograph in the article, feeling the blood drain from his face. The newspaper featured a photo of the same young woman in the red velvet coat, identifying her as the last victim of the Oakhaven flood. Arthur Miller, the man in his 50s with salt and pepper hair, wire-rimmed glasses, and a brown trench coat, realized she had been trying to go home on the anniversary of her death. He returned to the site where Oakhaven once stood, finding only overgrown foundations and a small weathered memorial stone near the tracks. He placed the silver locket on the stone, and for a brief moment, the wind seemed to carry the sound of a soft, thankful whisper. The heavy atmosphere that had followed him since the train ride finally began to lift. Arthur Miller never forgot that night, often wondering how many other souls are still trying to find their way back to places that no longer exist. He realized that some mysteries aren't meant to be solved by logic, but are simply echoes of a past that refuses to be forgotten. The world is full of vanishing passengers, traveling on lines that cross between the living and the dead, looking for a peace they never found. As he walked away from the ruins, he looked back one last time, seeing a flash of red in the distance before it faded into the evening mist. Some journeys never truly end. They just repeat until the story is heard.